What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Sports Hotline Show. I'm Sean Davis. We have a big time video for you guys today that I'm super pumped up about. Today's video, we're going to be breaking down what is a really deep guard class, in my opinion. We're going to be ranking my top 10 guards in this NBA 2024 draft class. But I do have some general thoughts on the class and like as a whole, really quickly before we do get into that. But first, quick reminder, please do subscribe right here to the Sports Headline Show's YouTube channel as we try to hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers. We're really close, guys. So if you guys are new, please do hit that subscribe button and smash that like button as well. Let's set a like goal. Let's set it at 15 likes. You guys would be really awesome. Would greatly appreciate that. But like I said, this is, in my opinion, a really deep guard class that I think this class kind of gets crapped on a ton, because it's just not a star-studded draft class. There isn't no Victor Wembanyama, or I guess for last year's class, there isn't a Scoot Henderson or Amin Thompson, who would both easily be my number one guard in this class if they were in this year's draft class. Or even if you were to go a year further back and you go to like a Jaden Ivey, even, right? Guys like that, this isn't that type of class, right? You're not going to find a guy, very many people, with a bunch of like superstar potential. But this is, in my opinion, a class that is really deep of rotation players and potential quality starters based off of where they get drafted at. So it gets crapped on a lot because there isn't a bunch of superstars in it. But in general, man, I do think this class is really fun. I had a bunch of fun diving into all 10 of these players, the guard class in general, but it's more specifically these 10 guys I'm going to be diving into. And we're going to start off with a name that I'm not really sure is, gonna be on a bunch of people's lists, but I had a ton of fun watching him. I think right now he's one of the biggest sleepers in the draft so far. And we're gonna start things off. We're gonna start with AJ Mitchell, guard out of UC Santa Barbara. And as you guys see here, we have like little attributes on the screen as well. So there's 10, attributes on the screen. We got playmaking ability, 3-point shooting, mid-range shooting, finishing ability, ball handling, perimeter defense, interior defense, athleticism, awareness, intangibles. There's a bunch of things that, like, a bunch of small things that kind of gets thrown into each category. But as a whole, these are the 10, attributes, if you will, like 2K attributes that get grades that are going to be displayed here on the screen. And I also have kind of like their fit in terms of what type of like role they're probably going to be in day one. Where I value them at in terms of like my comp, not my comp, but what grade I gave them. So AJ Mitchell is the second round grade for me, and then obviously my pro comp. And then in terms of this grade that you see on your screen here, 6.35, I'll put my grading scale in the description down below. But AJ Mitchell, let's start off with just like the stuff to love about him. His versatility as an offensive player, it really intrigues me. He's a guy that can create for himself out of the pick and roll, or even out of isolation scenarios where he can get to the rim. He can hit mid-range jumpers to at an all right level. I probably like his mid-range like the least out of the three like levels of the floor, which is obviously why it's the lowest attribute grade, if you will. I think a lot of his mid-range jumpers are a little bit more like out of the like within not in the flow of the game. And I think that's honestly more so because of the situation at UC Santa Barbara, where AJ Mitchell is the only way it felt like a lot of times that team was going to score the basketball. And in the games where he didn't play well and they won, it was kind of a miracle. But I'm a buyer in the 3-point shot. I think day one, the easiest role for him is going to make him as a stationary shooter that's going to hit spot up, catch and shoot threes, that can leverage his 3-point shooting ability to attack closeouts, get to the rim, be a connecting piece playmaker. And that leads into my point about his finishing ability, where he's not this incredible like vertical athlete or like, first step, athlete. I think he's an adequate NBA athlete in both of those stages. But he's a guy that at UC Santa Barbara lived off of paint touches. 41.2% of his shots in the half court were at the rim. And he finished at a 60% clip on those, which is really impressive to me. At UC Santa Barbara, he just finds a way to impact the game. There'll be games, even if he's not playing well, there'll be games where he shows off the playmaking ability and his willingness to be a playmaker. He's a good rebounder. And he's just a flat out competitor. And that's the type of guy that I think a lot of NBA teams are going to want to have. In my opinion, absolutely has the ability to project as an NBA level defender. I think he uses his 6'5" frame nicely to stay in front, navigate around screens, and be able to contest at a high level. I'm super, super excited about that. I think one of the knocks on AJ Mitchell, and this is probably the biggest reason why he's not being talked about enough, in my opinion, in some draft circles and amongst like some of the top draft analysts, is because just quite frankly, the level of competition at UC Santa Barbara just is not good at all. And I think there is going to be some question, in my opinion, about AJ Mitchell's ability like to go from that conference to the NBA. I think that's just gonna be a natural conversation that's going to come up amongst NBA circles. But I think that's not enough for me to not like this player. I think you just evaluate what you see on tape and you don't really focus on the some of the other stuff as much. But I do think that's something you have to consider. He does have a few plays a game where I just facepalm like, oh man, that's a really, really bad play. Um, like I said, he's not the best athlete in the world. And some of the shot selection and decision making at times is kind of like, bro, again, going back to the face palming thing, like, bro, what are we doing? But again, I really, really would just say that your situation was that bad at UC Santa Barbara, where if he didn't score, if he didn't create, a lot of times it was really, really hard for them to generate any offense. I kind of view him as like an Andrew Nembhard type of player. But I'm curious to see what you guys think in the comments down below about any of my pro comps. But a guy that uh a guy that does a lot of the little things. You'll see him diving on the floor. Like I said, man, just a incredible competitor, and that's the guy I think a lot of teams are gonna want. All right, number 9B. We have a tie here for my number 9 spot. So we're gonna go to Devin Carter. Devin Carter out of Providence. I don't want to say I'm a Devin Carter hater. I don't want to sound like I don't like Devin Carter. But I've seen some mock drafts and some big boards that have Devin Carter as a lottery player, as high as like number 10. And that is really, really rich for me. Now I'm going to start with the positives, and I think he is this year's Brandon Podziemski. And maybe I'm just overthinking it, as I kind of think I kind of overthought Brandon Podziemski last year. But I did have a higher grade on Brandon Podziemski last season. But Devin Carter is a really talented offensive player that I think is going to have a bunch of offensive versatility, which again, I think that's the theme of this year's draft class with the guards, especially. Although he is a below the rim finisher, he's a really crafty one that finishes at around a 65% clip this season. He is an insanely high IQ, just smart defender, whether he's on ball or off ball, whether it's making rotations, whether it's, navigating ball screens, calling out different switches and things like that defensively. Really, really smart player. And I definitely think that he's going to be able to track as like a point of attack defender. He uses his frame really, really nicely. I think his playmaking ability is going to be more of like a connecting playmaker. And that kind of leads to one of my weaknesses for Devin Carter. And I just don't think that, if we're talking about like creation ability for his teammates or for himself at the NBA level with NBA athletes, even like an average NBA athlete, quite frankly. I think it's going to be really, really hard for him. I think you go watch Stephen Castle guard him, who, mind you, is probably the best defender, the second best perimeter defender in the class. It's him and it's Ryan Dunn out of Virginia. Like it just makes it really, really tough for him. Like these bigger, more physical, or just even more athletic guards that can get into him a little bit more. I think Castle really neutralized him. If you go look back at that film, I think that he is capable of making like the necessary reads. I don't think it's like a high volume, like insane like playmaker. And I think that's not even necessarily a weakness, because I think, again, like in a connector type role, again, like in a Brandon Podziemski type role, I think he makes a ton of sense there. He is a really freaking good rebounder too, which is stuff like that's gonna keep him on the floor really easily, in my opinion. And he has this really cool and interesting knack, and you can maybe attribute this to how like he probably needs to just do this out of necessity for his offensive game. But this was one of the things that just pops out to you on film when you watch Devin Carter is his ability to turn drives into a Barkley, which a Barkley is just a drive into a post up, where he'll drive right at you. Maybe you stop him or whatever on the drive, but you just immediately post you up, and he has to craft in this, like I said, the finish around the rim, get to his mid-range game. And that's really, really fun to when you watch that on film with Devin Carter. Like I said, I think, quicker wings, more athletic guards and wings, stuff like that can really shut him down offensively from a creation standpoint. And while he was a really, really good three-point shooter his junior season, I know on the screen it accidentally says sophomore. That is a mistake. While he was a really, really good shooter his junior season, I think the release of his shot is a little slow. And I think at the NBA level, that is going to kind of affect his ability again from an on-ball creation upside standpoint. I really, really do. I think that's going to hinder that just a little bit as well. He is going to be an older player coming in off the bat. He's going to be 22 by draft night, excuse me. So that is something that I do think is going to, potentially hinder some of his offensive game as well. Again, love the defense, love the offensive versatility. I love a lot of stuff about him. I think the athleticism, the lack of true on-ball creation at the next level, in my opinion, does kind of hinder that just a little bit and knock his grade down a bit. Number 9A, I guess, if you will, is Tyler Kolek, who, in my opinion, I think he's a little bit kind of the opposite of Devin Carter in some ways. Again, not a good NBA athlete as well. He's already 22 years old. I want to say he'll be 23 years old by draft night again. So that is something that I think these NBA teams do take account of, just how much more juice you're going to get out of him in terms of upside standpoint, or is this kind of going to be the player you're going to get? And this is the player you're going to get. I still like Tyler Kolek a lot. He's a big part of this Marquette team that's trying to make a national championship run currently. Or maybe they lose in the round of 32. At the time of this recording, they haven't played the round of 32 game yet. But okay, more about the player. So my pro comp for him is Goran Dragic. There's been a couple of the names that have been floating around. I'm like, okay, that makes some sense to me. I think he's a guy that is a late first round dude. If he slips anywhere past 35, again, top 35, that's why I have him as a top 35 pick in the draft. If he slips into the 40 somehow, he would probably have to test really, really poorly in the pre-draft process for that to happen, though. But that's how much I really, really like his game. I think he's one of the best playmakers in this draft class, that he can, pull off any pass, just the range of passes he can make with any hand, either hand, left or right, and the different angles he can make with these passes, the degree of difficulty. It's really, really awesome. He has a really crafty floater and the ability to change the angles down his finishes at the rim. And I think he should really, really project highly as an NBA three-point shooter, especially as an off-ball player. I think it's a smart player that competes defensively, navigates screens fairly all right, and he does a good job of getting his hands into the passing lanes and trying to get steals that way. And he has a really, really, really nice change of speed and kind of a quick twitch, even a little bit, where in a ball screen, he'll be able to navigate it really, really nicely, pick his spots, and just be able to slow you down, maybe get you on this hip, and then take that quick twitch speed, use one step, get to the rim, and things of that nature. I think again, the age is something that's going to factor into some of his weaknesses. I think while he is a good three-point shooter, I think in terms of an on-ball thing, he needs to quicken the release just a bit for NBA level defenses. Again, he kind of reminds me of Goran Dragic in that way, where Dragic's release was never quick, in my opinion, especially where he releases it at. But it was good enough. So, hey, who knows? Due to his size and just the lack of explosiveness, again, very similar to a Devin Carter situation. I do think that bigger wings and quicker guards can give Tyler Kolek some trouble, but I'm not going to overthink it with Tyler Kolek. He is a really freaking good NBA player. A really freaking good player in general. This is one thing I forgot to put in my notes with Tyler Kolek, but I know I said he has a good floater, which he does. But Tyler Kolek, I would like to see some more from the mid-range with him. I think that is something that I think at the next level where the NBA is a drop coverage oriented league. And I'm not going to say he can't shoot mid range jumpers, but like per synergy, he's taken 5 pull-up 2s all season. He's taken 5, and those are the only 5 jumpers he's taken all season from the mid range area. So I just need to see him take it more. I really, really wish that he would attack the very limited drop coverage he would see, like, but Creighton runs a bunch of it. Like, I would really, really love for a Tyler Collect at the next level to just shoot freaking mid-range jumpers more. That's essentially all I'm trying to get at. He's a really talented three-point shooter, I think. I buy the floater, like I said, really talented floater, 77th percentile in terms of points per shot attempt on floaters in the country. Can get to the rim and finish there without a problem. If you look at his half court like possessions, 43.5% of his shot attempts in the half court come at the rim. So he can be a guy that can get to the rim with this craftiness, not really his athleticism. But I like Tyler Collect. I feel like I got a little bit more negative towards the end, but I'm just giving you an honest evaluation and assessment of the player. And yeah, I like him a lot. Again, my comparison for him is a Goran Dragic type. So this next player here at number 7, I think is going to get a lot of backlash. That's what we're here for. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are here about this next player. And I want to say this. My grade of him, whether if you want to grade him as a guard or like a bigger wing, it doesn't really change much. There's a formula I have, and like the number like spits out, and I think it maybe goes up by 0.1. So I think it doesn't really change much, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. My projection of him doesn't change, even though he's going to be 7 on here. It doesn't change my thoughts of him as a player, this upcoming player, and where I view him in terms of this draft. So number 7 is Jacoby Walter. I am lower on Jacoby Walter. There's still some mocks that have Jacoby Walter in the top 10 or like top 10. We'll stick with that, right? And that is just a little bit rich for me. Again, I have him as like the top 20. I think very late lottery to the mid to late teens is right around my range personally for Jacoby Walter. I have my pro com for him, which is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which you've probably seen a ton already. I just think it makes sense. I'm a believer in the defense. I'm gonna start with the positives, right? Because I feel like I already kind of started off on the wrong foot with Jacoby Walter. I'm a believer in the defense. I don't think he gets enough credit for the defensive ability. I get at the beginning of the season, there was some struggles with him defensively, Jacoby Walter, in terms of just giving up too many easy looks when he's guarding at the point of attack. But I think right around midseason, he really made the switch, and I'm a believer of his defense. From the tape I saw, I loved his activity on ball, whether it was guarding drives, which I think is something he got better at, like I said, as the season progressed, ball screens even. I think he has the frame and he has the athleticism. I don't think he's this crazy athlete, but I do think he has the frame and the athleticism to keep up with NBA level guys. And that is something I'm really, really excited about with Jacoby Walter. I think that he is an incredible three-point shooter, and I'm not going to knock him for the percentage from the college level because yes, like he really was in a slump down the stretch. I forget really in Big 12 play as a whole, right? He definitely was going through some rough patches, but I buy the jumper a freaking ton. He's top 5 in the league in the country amongst Power 5 conference players with at least 50 scoring possessions. He's top 5 in off-screen efficiency amongst all Power 5 conference players with, like I said, with at least 50 scoring possessions. Scoring possessions per synergy are made shot, missed shot, foul, and a turnover. Top 5 in the country. And I do think he has some untapped offensive upside where I think, again, if the right team comes along that makes sense, that has the real plan for him and buys into the fit of Jacoby Walter, sure, I think he can exceed this ranking here of 7 amongst my guards and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope being my pro com for him. But that's where we get to some more of the negative things I do have about Jacoby Walter right now. And I think I don't buy the playmaking. I think he is a limited playmaker as of right now. Again, that could partially be due to the role he's being played in at Baylor. I'm not a buyer. I'm not a big buyer in the sub creation ability. I think that he doesn't do a good job embracing contact at the rim, and he's why he's a really bad finisher. Before the NCAA tournament started, he was a bottom five player amongst a bottom five player in the country amongst Power Five conference players at finishing at the rim, where he finishes at a 46.3% clip at the rim. And I believe that's only layups. I think I took out dunks, but just doesn't have an explosive first step in driving, which ultimately leads him to taking a bunch of tough contested mid-range jumpers and things of that nature. I like Jacoby Walter, but I honestly just think he's going to go to a team that needs a shooter, that needs a guy that can run off some screens and be a 3-and-D wing slash guard. And again, my thoughts will change on him depending on how you view him. If you view him as a wing slash forward or as a two. But I do like Jacoby Walter. I do. I just have a little more concerns about him as a prospect that I think some others do. And that's just my cup of tea on Jacoby Walter. Number 6 is my guy. This is probably my favorite player I've watched so far, Jared McCain. Oh my gosh, I love Jared McCain. I don't understand why he isn't getting enough love, in my opinion. Kind of similarly to AJ Mitchell, the fact that I think these two dudes deserve more love than they're probably getting right now, honestly. So let's just start with it, right? And I actually had a pretty hard time with giving him a pro comp. I kind of landed around like a guy like Emmanuel quickly. I still don't feel great about that one. So if you have a better comp, let me know in the comment section down below. But a comp I had seen that is probably the more popular comp for a guy like a Jerry McCain is Seth Curry, which I am back up. I don't think that's a fair representation of what Jerry McCain is as a player. And this is kind of unrelated, but I was, obviously I have to watch and evaluate Tyrese Proctor, who's not on the list, just so you guys know. Spoiler, I guess, but I mean, I'd be kind of crazy putting him in my top 5. But I was watching Tyrese Proctor tape, and there will be plays where I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, Tyrese Proctor, I know I'm grading you or whatever, I'm evaluating you and trying to, do focus on you right now. But Jared McCain makes an insane rotation defensively, or Jared McCain makes a really high level read as a playmaker, or Jared McCain makes a super tough fit, or something along those lines, right? And I guess we'll start with the shooting ability because that is the best trait for him and why he gets the Steph Curry comp. He is legitimately one of the best three-point shooters in this draft class. And if for some reason the playmaking doesn't translate to the NBA level, he isn't the insane finisher that he is right now at the next level, or any of those things, right? I fully trust he's going to be a really good three-point shooter at the next level. He can hit the three off the dribble, on spot up attempts, in transition, has some off-screen upside. Like, Jared McCain as a shooter is ridiculous. Although he's not a really athletic player, which is probably the biggest knock on Jared McCain, in my opinion, he's not this super athletic, explosive player, but he's a really solid, crafty finisher around the rim where he has a multitude of different angles and ways to get the shot up on the glass. Before the NCAA tournament, he was shooting at a 62% at the rim. Like I said, really good finisher for his size. He competes. I'm reading verbatim here what I got my scouting report for him. He competes his ass off defensively, man. He does a good job of navigating on ball screens. Does a really nice job communicating off the ball, which really does help him get some steals. I think he'll just be a plug and play player in the NBA because of his flexibility on both ends of the floor, quite frankly. And I think because of how he competes defensively and how he does, like, just talks at a high level, and he is able to get some off-ball steals, I think it'll be a lot harder to kind of go at him defensively because I do think he does really care about playing hard on that end of the floor. And I know some people are going to say, well, Sean, he gets the Steph Curry comp because he doesn't get a lot of the playmaking responsibility. And again, I think you got to evaluate the situation. Like, Tyrese Proctor's been a fine shooter, a pretty good shooter. Actually, I think I'm probably not giving him enough credit there with his shooting ability. But yeah, Tyrese Proctor, got Jeremy Roach, got some other players on that team as well, right? That are at their best with the ball in their hands. And with Jared McCain being an insane shooter, Duke said, and kind of, fairly like so, right? Said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We are going to put you in an off ball role primarily, right? And we're going to ask you to catch, shoot threes. And at the start, there were some struggles with Jeremy McCain. And then Tyrese Proctor goes down with an injury. Jeremy McCain gets a bigger role. And that's kind of where the draft buzz started with Jeremy McCain. It's like, oh yeah, you can't play make. And I think if you watch some of his his high school tapes, you're like, oh yeah, this guy can play make some a little bit. So I think he's going to be a plug and play NBA player simply because of his ability to compete defensively and just the offensive versatility is completely there. I'm not in love with like the ball handling ability and the ability to um like really create insane amount of separation with his handle. It's not like completely tight and like, you know, I don't even want to say flashy. Flashy is probably not the right word, but it's not the most impressive handle or super super tight. And the mid range, I think it's not as reliable as you would love it to be, but I think he's a good enough. He's a good enough 3-point shooter. He's a really good. Good enough is an understatement. He's a damn good 3-point shooter and a good enough finisher at the rim to where if it doesn't for some reason really materially, I'm not really worried about it. And again, he's an average, maybe even a slightly below average NBA athlete. And just the lack of explosiveness in general, I think if you put a bigger defender on him, and this might be the reason why he maybe never gets a true, primary ball handler, lead guard, like type of role. I think if you put like a more athletic, bigger defender on him, I think that does raise some question marks about Jeremy McCain. But I do love Jeremy McCain a lot. I really, really do. Probably my guy that I'm pounding the table for in this draft class. Like, put him in a situation like Miami as a long-term guard next to Jimmy, next to Bam, next supposed to coach. Hey, let me cook. All right, number 5, Isaiah Collier. And I'm going to give Isaiah Collier some credit, man. And he's probably the deepest, scouting report I've got on a player is, and this has been talked about a little bit, but I'm just going to shed more light on it. For a young player, one of the most impressive things for a young player to do is to go through something awful as a player, as in regards to like your development or whatever. Go through something really, really bad, really, really struggle. And because Isaiah Collier was coming into the year as a top 5 pick and really, really struggle, get hurt, which is another like mental just sucker punch at him, and come back and not completely have it figured out, but like it really felt like once he came back from his injury, it just clicked. And it's, oh, okay, this is how I should read it, a college level defense. Or, oh, look, I probably should have just ran or like just completely drive recklessly to the rim and like with the chicken with his head cut off. Because that's kind of what you saw from Isaiah Collier at the beginning of the year. But he comes back from injury and he just plays lights out. And it sucks because USC was really, really bad. And he never really got to show it on the national stage once he got back from injury. But he's a super freaking physical finisher at the rim. He uses his frame exceptionally well, where he's able to absorb contact at the rim, which is really, really fun. He's a freaking dominant finisher off of 2 feet. Like, if you're a team that that has a big emphasis on 2-foot finishers, look no further than Isaiah Collier. He shoots an absurd 68% clip at the rim when he's able to finish off of 2 feet. Shout out to my guy Eugene, who's a great guy. Follow him on Twitter. I'll put his link down, his Twitter handle down in the comment section below, for providing me with that stat right there. But he's a really freaking good finisher at the rim. And I think you want to talk about interesting knacks, going back to Devin Carter with Isaiah Collier. He has this really interesting knack where you watch his ball screen possessions, where if you allow him to reject the ball screen and kind of get you off balance, and while he's attacking the rim with a full head of steam, yeah, just game over, right? Because I think, again, letting him explode off of 2 feet, or even if the big comes over, I think down the stretch of the season, you saw him be more comfortable making the dump off passes or making the correct corner skip pass and things like that. Although there is like very, very limited sample size, he's shown the ability to play off ball and be a catch and shoot option this season. He's scoring at a 1.071 point per possession clip on 28 spot up catch and shoot possessions. So very, very limited upside. But I think that is something that you could, really evaluate and put nicely towards Isaiah Collier. And like I said, really, really good pick and roll player, showed real growth in his ability to process reads and make the correct play more frequently towards the beginning of the season. I'm really, really curious at how Isaiah Collier, going more to the weaknesses, if you will. I'm really, really curious at how Collier is going to like attack again a drop coverage heavy league at the next level. Didn't show a bunch of comfortability with his ability to attack drop via pull up mid range jumpers or 3-point shots. Again, he is kind of raw a little bit from the sense of like the jumper and things like that. And obviously just really, really struggled at the beginning of the year with his ability. Like he just really disrupted the flow of the game at times by forcing tough shots, making just flat out bad reads, and being a turnover happy player at the beginning of the year. I think because of that, he is still somewhat of a raw prospect with his playmaking, where I think he needs to go to a spot where he can sit behind another, like a veteran guard, and kind of learn a little bit more how to be a better playmaker. I definitely think he's growing as a playmaker, but there are still some coverages I think you can obviously tell still confuse him. Defensively, while he shows some potential at times, while the athleticism translates nicely offensively, defensively, he oftentimes looks like a clunky athlete when guarding the ball and is a little bit too prone for my liking to getting beat off the dribble in live ball one-on-one situations. Um, I do think a large part of that, though, was just how freaking bad and why he might look like a bad defensive prospect is how damn bad like the defensive coverages and schemes were at USC. But this is something else, and this is why I don't think he's a good defensive player. But this is why I think there is a little bit more that he can provide defensively if he is willing to buy in more on that end of the floor. Because when I watch Isaiah Collier at USC defensively, I really think that outside of, like I said, just him being a clunky athlete a little bit defensively, my initial comp honestly is like a running back because he has just like running back build from the waist down, just his legs and how massive he is in terms of his ability to just drive at the rim and be like that explosive 2-foot finisher. But I think a lot of the problems with him and again at USC lead to two things. I think it's either one of two things. One, it's the scheme. And I don't think USC scheme defensively was all that spectacular. It's more often than not times like just a really brutal watch for Isaiah Collier's defense, or excuse me, USC's defense. It was just a very rough watch at times. Or the other thing, and this is kind of what I'm more leading towards with specifically Isaiah Collier, was I just don't think he has good technique. Where I think oftentimes he puts himself in a bad position, whether it's off the ball and the ball gets swung back to his man, and just his positioning and his technique in terms of how he closes out and or maybe how high up he is guarding the ball handler. I think again, you put him in a situation where he gets to learn a little bit more, still get the reps, but learns how to be a better playmaker, gets a little bit better technique, in my opinion, with his foot placement, again, where he is off the ball and how he closes out, just small stuff like that. I think you really see not a complete liability defensively and a guy that can legitimately be a lead ball handler at the next level. I'm really, really high on Isaiah Collier. He's going to slot in at number 5 for me. Number 4, and I thought I was crazy with his comp right here, but number 4 is going to be Rob Dillingham. And follow me here. My low end comp is Malik Monk. I think a lot of times when I watch his tape, I am watching Malik Monk all over again. And the Sacramento Kings played the Memphis Grizzlies, I want to say a week or two now, and maybe last week. And the Grizzlies, by the way, should have won that game in the first half. I mean, in the fourth quarter, they weren't able to get the job done. And in overtime, Malik Monk just goes nuts and takes the game over. Ultimately, the Kings wind up winning that game. And I'm watching that game, and I think I say to Trevor Lane from Lakers Nation, I'm like, yeah, this is Rob Dillingham. Like that, this is the Rob Dillingham experience. When he goes nuts, it's really freaking hard to guard him. He has a nice handle. To be able to create separation from his defender. And he is just one, and I'm gonna say I think he is the best shot maker whether it's from a self-created shot, off ball, whatever. Like his ability to create shots for himself and knock down shots is ridiculous. I freaking love Rob Dillingham. Just the shot creation, all that stuff. I think the high end comp, and this is where I'm sure I'm going to get way more critics about this. And again, let me know. The super high end comp, we're going to stay with the Kentucky guard. We're going to go with Tyrese Maxey for Rob Dillingham. I think this is going to boil down to two things with Rob Dillingham. It's one, the situation he ends up at. I think you put him in a spot like San Antonio, you are more likely it increases the possibility of you getting the Tyrese Maxey comp where he can be a lead guard and he's like the number 2 option to and Embiid for Tyrese Maxey or Victor Wembanyama for Rob Dillingham. And you go to a spot like San Antonio where they are now able to surround him. I mean, the defense is the number one concern where he might be the worst defender, definitely the worst defender on this list. But and we still haven't gotten to like Nikola Topic, for example. But that you don't have to worry about that as much because it's Jeremy Sohan, it's Devin Vassell, it's Victor Wembanyama, it's they just have they'll probably draft another defender to put aside him. So Ron Hall, I don't know, you guys get my drift. That's if the Raptors pick falls outside of the top 10. It falls out of the top 6. So I think you get a situation like that, you're more likely to get the Tyrese Maxey comparison. But I also think this is another name that kind of flew around in my head. I think you are more likely to get him bottoming out and being a player like a Bones Highland, right? Where, again, small guard kind of fits the mold. They can hit some tough shots, but just doesn't really get it. But I think you put him in a spot, another popular comp, not comp, but landing spot for him. I've seen him mocked to Memphis a few times. And I'm like, okay, if he goes to a spot like Memphis, you're getting Malik Monk. And that's completely okay. So I just think depending on where he ends up will probably determine what end of the spectrum I think you're going to get with Rob Dillingham. But I think day one, he'll be a playable player for an NBA team because I think day one, he just has great offensive versatility due to be able to play on ball or off ball at a high level. I think he is a little bit of a better passer. They sometimes gets credit for. Can shoot off ball. On off ball screen, spot ups, transition off the dribble. He gets to the paint nicely at an all right rate, which does also really leverage his playmaking ability. But like I said, just one of the worst guard defenders, if not the worst guard defender in this draft class, where he does get bullied. And I don't know how much he does put forth to that defensive side of the floor. And my biggest pet peeve, it's not even the shot selection, which can be a little bad at times to be kind of nice there. I think my biggest pet peeve with him and just smaller guards in general, which you'll often find, is he often tries to avoid contact at the rim, which does lead to some of the poor percentages. And I just don't. I think that's something you got to teach him to do. Like, bro, you have to absorb contact better and not be afraid to absorb contact, or he'll just settle for bad mid-range jumpers because he just doesn't want to go through contact at the rim. But I do like Rob Dillingham. And once again, let me know your thoughts on my comps in the comments down below. Number 3, we got Stephon Castle out of UConn. I like Stephon Castle a lot more than I think some other people do. I think he has a case along with like Ryan Dunn, although you could say Ryan Dunn's more of a wing stopper at the next level, to be the best perimeter defender or point of attack defender in this draft class. His ability to guard, to recover when guarding ball screens is special. He's a really, really good athlete in space, and I'm going to be more specific about that one. Again, in space, really, really good freaking athlete. It should really be able to benefit from having NBA level floor spacing. I think he has some playmaking upside that he doesn't always get to show at UConn, which is why I think sometimes people get really, I don't want to say the word defensive, but they push back a lot on like the Anthony Black comp, which I'm going to go with here. But I think Anthony Black was just able to display a little bit more at Arkansas, but very similar type players, 6'6", very similar size as well, like 6'6", that can defend at a freaking high level, play make, and score. And he does a really, really nice job, I think, of getting to his spots in the mid range area, and be able to pick his spots on the floor. A really, really good pick and roll player. I think that's also something that he does do a nice job of at UConn. Um, while he does do a nice job, excuse me, while he is a good athlete, in my opinion, he weirdly is not like do the best job of always embracing contact at the rim. He isn't a very crafty finisher around the rim. And this isn't necessarily his fault, but this is definitely something you have to pay attention to. A lot of his offensive production is in transition or offensive rebounds or on off-ball possessions. So I do think you would have to get him, some more. You would like to see him in a little bit more of an on-ball creation type possessions. Get some more of those out of him. And although I am a believer in the jumper, I don't think the jumper is broken. It's just not anywhere near consistent enough yet. And that's honestly the biggest thing with Stephon Castle. If he gets a reliable jumper, I think you're looking at the next two-way superstar in the NBA. I am not saying that politely. He is that good, in my opinion. He has all the intangibles. He has all like the IQ things. He's a good enough athlete, in my opinion. The jumper just needs to be somewhat consistent. We are freaking cooking. Next up, number 2 on our list is Reed Sheppard. I mean, what more do I have to say about Reed Sheppard, man? Jeremy Kane's a great shooter. Rob Dillion's a great shooter. And Reed Sheppard is a ridiculous shooter, man. Like the efficiency plus the volume, man. And maybe I'm doing him a disservice by having an A for 3-point shooting. But golly, man, he is just ridiculous. And obviously, given how good of an off-ball shooter he is, NBA team is going to love his versatility as an offensive player. Where year one, you could probably use him more as not a lead ball handler, but as a secondary guy that you're going to move around a little bit more in terms of on or off the ball. The way he processes the game, like all the times you talk about, like, and this is incredibly high praise. I don't want to get disrespectful, but you hear people talk about like guards like Rajon Rondo or like Chris Paul or LeBron, even just in terms of their mental capacity and like how they're able to process the game. And Reed Sheppard's ability to process the game and read defenses, or even off on defense too, even like read an offensive player at this age. I mean, I think it'll be 20 by the time the draft starts. It's going to allow him like to have major minutes as a rookie, because I do think that even though he's not the best on-ball defender and he's not this insane athlete, his processing speed is so freaking ridiculous, man. Who almost always makes the right play. He also really just plays within the flow of the game too, which you don't really see him force a bunch of stuff. Has a super tight handle when you do ask him to create. His hands defensively and activity defensively, again, gives him a lot more of a positive outlook as an NBA player on the defensive end. And that's part of the reason why as a super high end comp, I gave him Mike Conley. And the shout out to, I think, our athletic director at the high school I coach at. We were, because I was going to go kind of back and forth and say, I don't know, honestly, with Reed Sheppard. And like, super best case scenario, I think this is like a Mike Conley where he can be a lead guard on a championship team who's a perfect like third option. I really, really do love Reed Sheppard. And if he's not a good NBA player, I would be freaking stunned. Um, I am a little interested to see, because of I don't think he's this crazy athlete. I am really interested to see how his self-creation game translates to the next level. He's not the best athlete, whether it's vertically or with just like, quick twitch speed and stuff like that, or lateral movement, stuff like that. And he's not this advanced ball handler either with how stuff like that. I do think that because of his athletic ability, I do think it impacts his ability as a finisher as a rim. As I think more physical players around the rim, or even just better athletes in general, can force him to take tougher shots at the rim, or maybe force him to take a more contested mid-range jumper. And this does impact his on-ball defensive ability as well, in my opinion, as I do think him not having this great foot speed is going to be a little bit interesting and much of a challenge for for him where he has to guard quicker NBA level guards at the next level. So that's something to keep an eye on. But again, if Reed Shepard's not a good NBA player, I would be really, really stunned. And that's the reason why I do have him above Rob Dillingham. There's a bit of a back and forth debate about who's better, Reed or Rob. I think Reed's a better player because I would just be floored if Reed Shepard's not a good NBA player. But that leads us to number one, and it's Nikola Topic. I got to get the name right before the draft. And I don't have a comp for Nikola. I found Nikola, sorry. I saw Goran Dragic. One, already did that with Tyler Kolek, and two, I just don't really see that with Nikola. And I'll just say this, right? He is a insanely creative offensive player with the ball in his hands. Like his ability, you want to talk about processing speed, like with Reed Shepard, it's almost there with Nikola Topic. He can create with the best of them with both hands, especially with the left hand going to the rim. Oh my gosh, he is a ridiculous finisher at the rim. He has really nice change of direction, like stop start speed, especially within ball screens, which makes him insanely tough to guard. He has great size, which I think is going to be important at the next level for him. With kind of slithery movements, he kind of moves around like really weirdly and unorthodox movements with the ball in his hands, where he can really just pick and choose his spots on the floor where he wants to get his shots from. He's an incredible finisher at the rim. If I haven't already mentioned that, I'm going to mention it again. Incredible finisher at the rim, despite being a below the rim finisher, where he can just get to a ton of different angles, getting the ball up wherever he wants on the rim. And I mean, I've talked about one of my biggest pet peeves with guards in general is them avoiding contact at the rim. That's not the case with Nikola Topic. He is absolutely, without a doubt, not afraid of absorbing contact at the rim, which is really, really impressive. We're talking about an 18-year-old kid just playing in a grown men league, just saying, nope, I don't care who you are. I'm going through you. I'm going to absorb this contact and finish at the rim. He's the best playmaker, in my opinion. I think Reed Shepard is the best processor, if you will, but I think just playmaker. He is the best playmaker in this draft, where there isn't a pass he can't make on the floor from any angle. Great processor, like I said, and has a great ability to just be able to pick apart a defense. He doesn't have right now a consistent in-between game. He honestly doesn't go to it enough as he probably should. I'm a believer in the shot. It's not completely broken. There is definitely still some work that he needs to do and to solidify it and really just trust it. Because right now, I think at the next level, you're just going to see teams go under a ball screen with them, and he has to be able to find a way to counter that. And at the current moment, he's just a liability defensively. He's a liability defensively. Maybe giving him a C for perimeter defense is a bit nice. But I think right now he is a liability defensively, as you will see him at times, get blown by often defensively when guarding on ball. But I do like Nikola Topic. I think right now I have him as a top 5 player projected, right? I need to finish the rest of my evaluations on the rest of the class. Really wanted to get this guard group done, but I'm super, super excited. I think in general, I like all 10 of these players a ton. And I think this is going to be a good guard class. I think, again, I'm more confident that a lot of these dudes become high-level role players and quality starters than I am a lot of them becoming superstars. But just because there's guys in this class that are going to be more quality starters for you doesn't mean they're not valuable, and doesn't mean that a lot of teams in this draft are going to be able to find good players and are going to prioritize a lot of this in this draft class. So I hope you all enjoy this video. Make sure you guys do leave a like on the video. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the post notification bells if you haven't already as well. We got a bunch of great content on the way. Next week, I'm going to be dropping my first mock drafts of the 2024 draft cycle. Going to be doing a film breakdown eventually at a couple of these prospects. So let me know who you want to see my first film breakdown on from this draft class. And speaking of film breakdowns, Alfred Sengun film breakdown drops this week as well. So we got a bunch of great content on the way here on the channel. So once again, make sure you guys subscribe as well. You guys follow me on Twitter at Sean_DAVI. Till next time, everybody. See ya. Have a good one. Peace out.